I was just sitting outside having my cup of coffee while watching a tree, or watching a tree while having my cup of coffee. I guess it all depends on which way you look at it. But on the tree, I noticed it was like a piney tree, had pine cones, and there were a lot of them. They were just hanging there off of just about every branch that was there, and it got me thinking. Well, they because of the way they were hanging in bunches, and some in two in bunches, they kind of look like testicles, and which reminded me that the acorns or the seeds that, for all intents and purposes, how the trees have sex, not have sex, but how they reproduce, their seeds go. I'll have to look that up to understand that even more. But my baseline knowledge of science is the seeds fall from the trees and then get blown around and get planted elsewhere, and then new trees come up. And then I was thinking from there about the idea that, I mean, these trees essentially are just, I don't know, like, I guess if you were to compare it to humans, just having sex with whoever, and then just walking away, or not walking away, but there's no accountability for the trees kids, or the trees that grow up from the seeds. And then I got to thinking, well, I mean, does it really matter at that point? Like, because the trees can survive, the seeds that grow into trees end up surviving, or they don't, I suppose. But those seeds don't become trees, so that doesn't really matter. That's, if you're thinking about it from the human perspective, it would just be you're having sex and you didn't get somebody pregnant, or you're having sex and didn't get pregnant. But so with those trees survive, and then that's fine. And then, so really, there's no problem there. The trees are not responsible for their trees that go out. So put that into the human perspective. Like, if someone is having sex indiscriminately, and we'll say from a male perspective, fathering all kinds of kids, there's plenty of celebrities that have records of not records, but have high numbers of kids, and are very popular about it. But like, so if you've got all of these kids and you're taking care of them, or they're able to survive, then there isn't a problem. But there are some cases where those kids are not able to survive, and I guess survive well too. On that personal level, there's definitely, I think, an issue for the kid that's supposed to survive, or they could live better in one situation versus another situation. But who's to say that parent or father, in their life, is going to be better or worse for the situation? I mean, that all depends on everything. But then there are the situations where, on a community scale, global scale, civilization, society scale, how does that work into what the kid grows into be? Maybe like how that shapes who they become. But that's on them at the end of the day. Sure, there are pieces that shape that a little bit, or that may shape that a lot. There's definitely influences that come into play there, but the idea of self, I don't know, accept it, not taking responsibility for your own actions. that idea, how much does that play into it? I think kids are kind of given a lot of slack in the sense that they're growing and learning, and everybody knows that. Everybody accepts that idea that all kids are growing and learning. Once you get to adulthood, there's a magic number, age that some people decide that, well, you're done growing and learning, and you are who you are. But I think there's a bit of an acceptance that we're always growing and learning. We're not the same person that we were 2 minutes ago. There are different influences in life that change things. Basically, you're one person here, and then you're one person here. And you grow and learn, and as you grow and learn, those things that you learn end up making you who you are at the time of learning it. So, with that said, so if we think of the problem of parents, deadbeat dads, or whatever, is the problem, or does it make sense to address the problem at the deadbeat dad level, to say, all right, we need to garnish wages, we need to focus on birth control, let's say, if we go down that route, the idea of everybody having kids and then restricting people from having kids, or really pushing birth control, even if that's against your moral values along the way. Does it make sense to really push on those things that kind of work on the individual turnout, when we don't really know one way or the other if a kid being born out of that is going to be better, I don't know, good for society, or if there's going to be a problem with them entering society at that point, or do we shift the focus of trying to solve the problem? Maybe it's just adjustment to society. Maybe it's just making sure people are good, or fit within societal boundaries, and can function well. And then if your goal is happiness for people as well, then play that into effect. So rather than put the resources involved with going after the individual and going after or preventing the problem from occurring, accept that from that individual perspective, and then work on that, the result. So addressing the root, I guess, of the problem would just be a person is not functionally well for society, or the society that you want. And then you can add on to that, a person is not individually happy, which in turn makes them less functional for society. Because if you're not happy, then chances are you're not functioning in the society to your full extent. And when I say functioning in a society, it's whatever, it can apply to anything. I mean, whatever that society's boundaries are, whatever those goals are, doesn't matter. But so if we look at just, all right, it doesn't matter who the kid is, or let's say, if we assume that the kids that are born of families are in good situations, we just make that assumption to make things easier. And then we say, all right, so now the kids that are born of a single family, single parent home, will be um, I don't know, but assisted in some way. I mean, we've got welfare programs and all of that stuff, but really focusing on those programs to, I don't know, throw food into the mix somehow, develop child-centered programs that, it doesn't matter where they come from, and then centralize those and build them up as opposed to just spreading them out, or maybe just have maybe strong communities. But that access has to be there, and it has to be, readily known about, and I don't know if enforced is the right word, but certainly proactively attained. But then you get into like that whole, maybe people do know about it because they do have programs like that all over the place. It's, they have your community centers, your groups, your organizations, and then it kind of, but maybe because you have all of those, there are so many, there's obviously a lot of kids who don't benefit from those programs, those groups that are there that could. And the reasons for that are, that's the question, I guess, for me right now is what would be the reasons for that? So if the reasons are knowledge that they exist, but what if a kid knows that they all exist? Well, is it something that they're professing interest in to the parent? And then is the parent willing to participate? So I think that probably has a lot to do with it too, that parent's participation in it. So obviously the money is going to be coming from the parent if it costs money. And then the time involved with transporting the kid. So maybe the answer in those types of situations is providing transportation, providing like funding that some other way. If you think about it from a community effort, I mean, if the community thinks that, or the society thinks that it's a worthwhile effort, then that would be something that probably could be funded through efforts there. And sure, they do bottle drives and all that stuff, but is it a matter of figuring those out a little more? If you're underfunded, where do you get the funding if not from the community? And then where would the incentive come into for the community to do that? And I guess the incentive would be, I don't know, to build a better community, like to build a better society that you're in. You're just kind of looking at the kids, looking at the youth, the future, with the assumption that they're going to grow whatever community you're in as they grow up within the community. But I wonder though, like with the whole globalization, people move around a lot, are available to work elsewhere. Like, what is that kind of the fear? Like, if they invest in their youth, the community's fear that they're just going to take their efforts elsewhere. But really, what's the problem with that? Because if you're, well, what are you getting out of it then? But if other communities are following that same suit, then you're going to kind of switch and go around anywhere. And then if you make your community worthwhile to stay in, what are they getting out of staying there? Then that's kind of where it is. I don't know. This is like a broader scope than I really started thinking about. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and cut myself off here and go on to some other stuff. Now that I've somewhat kind of processed a little bit of seeing acorns on trees on my Saturday morning. Bye.